Bonneau, Senior Tax Counsel with the Northern Trust Company in Chicago.
Jerry, do you want to introduce?
Our next speaker is he also teaches the generation skipping course in the graduate program in estate planning at the University of Miami. And the theme of his course is all of the mistakes that people can make when they're doing generation skipping. And it's a very practical speech because he's going to basically just point out a litany of little details that you have to consider. Okay.
Hey everyone, this is Steve Bonneau, Senior Tax Counsel with the Northern Trust Company in Chicago, Illinois. Today I'm going to give you a preview of my presentation at the 50th Annual Notre Dame Tax and Estate Planning Institute. So the title of my topic is Of Swifties and Skippies, a modern take on the GST tax, straight from the not-so-tortured planners department. So let me talk about the title. The title is derived, or it's a nod to Taylor Swift's most recent album, The Tortured Poets Department. So I'm sure you're probably all thinking right now, is this guy really going to talk about the GST tax and Taylor Swift at once? And the answer is, yes, I am. Let me kind of tell you a little bit about how it all started. Are you ready for it? So let's go back to the spring of 2023. And that's when the Eras Tour started in the United States. That's also when I started to think about putting together another article with respect to the GST tax. And what I decided to do, based on Taylor Swift being in the limelight and being someone who's always loved music and pop culture, what I decided to do was to take various GST tax issues and set them to a playlist of Taylor Swift songs and lyrics. And essentially, each song title serves as the soundtrack for that particular topic at issue. And so I started to do some research, started to learn a little bit more about Taylor Swift and her music. I was a pretty casual fan. I did not consider myself to be a Swiftie. For those of you who are familiar with Taylor Swift, you know that the Swifties are the most passionate and loyal members of her fan base. But I started to kind of draw some connections between Taylor Swift and her music and the generation skipping transfer tax. And so now we're at the present time. We know of the enormous financial impact that the Eras Tour has had on local economies as it stops in various cities around the globe. And we know about the enormous effect that Taylor Swift has had in the academic world. There are colleges and universities, as well as law schools, that are teaching classes that involve Taylor Swift. There are classes that bring in subject matters from intellectual property to literature, all involving Taylor Swift. And so that brings us to our title for my presentation. That is a modern take on the GST tax, straight from the not-so-tortured planners department. During my presentation, I am going to kind of serve as the fictional chair of the tortured planners department. You could say it's at Taylor Swift University School of Law. And what I do is I study tortured planners. They are really the subject of this academic department. And so I'm going to study tortured planners in the context of Chapter 13, the GST tax. What do tortured planners do incorrectly when it comes to Chapter 13? And then I'm taking the viewpoint from the not-so-tortured planners department, given my experience with Chapter 13. In my job here at Northern Trust, I spent a lot of time on Chapter 13 based on the number of trusts that we administer that are subject to the GST tax. And so I'm going to give you some tips to follow. I'm going to point out some traps to avoid when it comes to the GST tax. Again, all from my perspective, the not-so-tortured planner. And so this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the basic concepts. I'm not going to assume that you have any level of understanding when it comes to the GST tax. We'll go through shared provisions within Chapter 13 that have some overlap to Chapters 11 and 12, and really point out the nuances or the differences between how those provisions are applied within Chapter 13 and how they are written and applied within chapters 11 and 12. We're going to talk about some current developments. We'll talk about the Green Book, as well as new regulations that have been released by Treasury on May 6, 2024, with respect to 2642 G1. I'll focus on exemption because that's what the Green Book has highlighted for several years, really kind of limiting its duration. But I really want to walk through how you allocate GST exemption. You can allocate manually, or you can rely on the automatic allocation rules. What happens if you do something wrong with respect to allocating exemption? If you make a mistake in allocating or not making an election with respect to a trust that should be treated as a GST trust, or opting out of those rules? Well, that's where the final regulations under 2642 G1 come into play. And I'll explain how you can actually go back, use these regulations to make an election or make an allocation, and have that allocation or election treated as if it were made timely. If that process is too cost prohibitive for your clients, then I'm going to talk about late allocations of GST exemption. Of course, everyone is talking about making full use of the bonus GST exemption and basic exclusion amount, which is set to go away. Under current law, we're only going to see these amounts until 1/1 of 2026, and then we're going to revert back to the levels pre-2018. Your clients can use their GST exemption that they have available now to make a late allocation to produce an inclusion ratio of 0 for a trust that is currently non-exempt. What happens if even after that late allocation, you do not have an inclusion ratio of 0? Well, then I'll talk about qualified severances and how you can basically ditch that inclusion ratio, get rid of it, and then create two brand new trusts. One have an inclusion ratio of 0 and the other have an inclusion ratio of 1. So those are the things that I'm going to talk about, all in the context of Taylor Swift. And I hope to see you next month at the 50th Annual Notre Dame Tax and Estate Planning Institute.
Bravo, that was excellent.
I think I'm going to have to bring one of my granddaughters to the program to understand the Taylor Swift references. I think what he spoke about is going to be really one of the huge overlooked planning opportunities as we head towards 2025 and ultimately the 2026 loss of that bonus GST exemption. A lot of clients that have estate tax planning off radar have exemption. That why lose it if you can use it? So that's a really important topic. And I think that we can open up the planning opportunities for clients well beyond the non-reciprocal slats and yada, yada to use exemption by addressing GST planning. A lot of old sins that have been committed because people didn't pay attention to it for moderate wealth clients, we can clean it up. And that's certainly a big part of what he said he would talk about. Really good stuff. Jerry, I think I'm going to have to come to this.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. Jerry, hats off as always. We've only scratched the surface. We've only looked at 15% of the presentations. You know, let's not forget that Turney Berry and Clary Red are going to start the Thursday off with a comprehensive review, and that they're going to top off the end with another review of what we've learned. So I always look forward to flying into South Bend on Southwest Airlines on Wednesday. I always take a car out back to Chicago Friday night, study my materials on the way there, and then fly back to Tampa on Saturday from Chicago. But who's playing football this year?
Louisville.
So a great opportunity for people to stay for Saturday and see Notre Dame versus Louisville.
Except the room rates triple for Friday and Saturday night.
That's okay, because the legal fees and the accounting fees that people are going to earn from being able to attend these presentations more than pay for that tax-deductible hotel night.
Yeah. Oh, one other program that is very important. One of the things that I've always been conscious of is we need to, because we are dealing with individuals who are moderately or significantly wealthy, we basically need to encourage them to give to charity. And besides the charitable gift annuity program, another one of our speakers, who I know very well, is going to talk about creative use of charitable remainder trusts in a way that will encourage people who may not be charitably inclined to give to charity. And that speaker happens to be Alan Gassman. And it's going to be basically, how can we encourage people to give to charity by showing them what you actually can give to charity doesn't cost you anything. Instead, what you can give to charity is what you would otherwise have paid in income taxes. And Alan's got a program on that as well. Okay.
Marty, any final words for us? I'm really looking forward to this.
Let's plug my program. I'm talking about trust administration. It sounds as exciting and dynamic as paint drying, but the reality is the Smaldino case, the Levine case, which was a taxpayer victory, really focused on the formalities that they adhered to. The recent Supreme Court case on insurance-funded buyouts. The taxpayers did virtually everything wrong and completely ignored the terms of their agreement. The Firehouse sub case, Sorensen, another issue, a Wandry clause was held not to apply because they didn't pay attention to formalities. So even though it's not nearly as exciting as any of these other topics, it's really important. And again, I think that's consistent with Jerry's theme, which I said in our introduction, focus on practical things that practitioners can really do something with. So sounds like another great institute, Jerry. I can say, as Alan had already said, I learned so much at your programs at Notre Dame. They're just really valuable to attend.
Oh, thank you, Marty. And we hope to remember, if you can't go to South Bend, we still have the ability to download all the materials, save them, and we'll send you the audio recordings for all 26 sessions so you can listen to them at a more convenient time to fit in your schedule.
And think how exciting this is going to make all of you for the holiday season that's upcoming. Just imagine how popular you're going to be at all the holiday parties when you can talk about all these topics.
Oh. Okay, well, with that, let's go.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it. I hope if you've enjoyed this video that you'll share it with others and share the Notre Dame experience. It's unparalleled.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. See you soon.
Take care.